I still remember the exact moment everything changed. Tuesday, 2:17 p.m. I was standing in our company's glass-walled conference room, heart pounding as I clicked to the final slide of my presentation. The room had fallen completely silent, and that's how we can capture the market segment our competitors don't even know exists yet, I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the adrenaline. For 5 years, I'd been just another face at Nexus Tech, a mid-level product developer who came in early, stayed late, and poured every ounce of creativity into making someone else's vision come alive. At 34, I wasn't the youngest person there anymore, but I still had that hunger, that belief that if I just worked hard enough, smart enough, the recognition would come. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I watched my boss, Marcus, lean forward in his ergonomic chair. His expression was unreadable. That practiced poker face he'd perfected over a decade of stealing ideas and climbing the corporate ladder. "This is interesting, Alex," he said finally, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against his leather portfolio. "Very interesting." Around the conference table, the executive team nodded, a few whispering to each other. I caught phrases like game changer and exactly what we need. For the first time in 5 years, they weren't looking through me, were looking at me. I should have known better. In the startup world, brilliant ideas are currency, and I had just handed over the jackpot without realizing the price I'd pay. 3 weeks later, I watched security escort me through the open floor plan office while my colleagues stared from behind their monitors. My access badge was already deactivated. My personal items from my desk were in a cardboard box that smelled faintly of the coffee I'd spilled last week, and Marcus didn't even have the decency to handle it himself. He sent HR to do his dirty work while he prepped for the big product launch. My product, my idea, my solution to the exact problem that had been tanking our quarterly numbers. "We're going in a different direction," the HR manager had explained with practiced sympathy. "Your position has been eliminated." I nodded. What else was I supposed to do? But I knew the truth. I'd seen the mock-ups on the conference room whiteboard yesterday, my exact designs, my exact specifications. They weren't eliminating my position. They were eliminating me. I thought my breakthrough idea would finally earn me a seat at the table. Instead, it got me thrown out of the building while my boss prepared to take full credit at next month's launch. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have understood, was that my idea wasn't just slides and market projections. It was the result of hundreds of late nights, countless iterations, and one critical insight that he had completely missed. The launch was coming. The investors were ready. The marketing team had already started the countdown. But I knew something they didn't, and the product launch Marcus was betting his career on. It was about to crash and burn in spectacular fashion. I wasn't always just another cog in the Nexus Tech machine. 5 years ago, when I first walked through those doors, the company was different. We all were. The office occupied just half a floor in a converted warehouse downtown, exposed brick walls, salvaged wood desks, and that perpetual smell of possibility mixed with cold brew coffee. Marcus interviewed me himself back then. He wore jeans and a slightly wrinkled button-down, not the tailored suits that came later. "We're building something revolutionary here," he told me, eyes bright with genuine passion. "We need people who can think beyond what exists today." I remember going home to my tiny studio apartment that night, calling my dad, and saying, "I think I found somewhere I can make a difference." The starting salary wasn't great, but the equity options and the promise of building something meaningful made up for it. Those first 2 years were everything I'd hoped for in a startup. Our team of 12 worked elbow to elbow, debating features, until midnight, celebrating small victories with cheap champagne, and sometimes sleeping under our desks to meet deadlines. Marcus was in the trenches with us, coding, brainstorming, ordering pizza when we worked weekends. He knew everyone's names, their partners' names, even their pets' names. Our first product launch was delayed 3 times, but when it finally happened, we all stood together watching the user numbers tick up on the big screen. Marcus put his arm around my shoulders and said, "This is just the beginning, Alex." I believed him. Then came the Series B funding, $25 million that changed everything. Suddenly, we had a real office on the 17th floor with keycard access and designated parking spaces. Our team of 12 became 50, then 100. Marcus moved into a corner office with frosted glass walls. Team meetings became departmental meetings, became executive briefings. I still believed in what we were building, though. I turned down 2 job offers with better pay because I had history at Nexus. I had sweat equity. 3 years in, I was leading a small product development team, reporting directly to our new VP of Product, who reported to Marcus, now sporting the title of Chief Innovation Officer. My parents didn't understand why I kept missing family gatherings. "The company won't love you back," my mother warned during one of our brief phone calls. I was halfway listening, focused on fixing a critical bug that had come up hours before a release. "It's not about that, Mom," I explained. "We're building something important enough that I postponed my vacation 3 times last year. Important enough that my relationship with Jamie ended after I missed our anniversary dinner because an investor meeting ran long. Important enough that I developed an intimate knowledge of every 24-hour takeout place within delivery distance of the office. The worst part? I was proud of these sacrifices. Each one felt like proof of my commitment, my professional dedication. Marcus would occasionally acknowledge my work with a quick "nice job" in passing, or a brief mention in the all-hands meeting. Those small moments of recognition kept me going far longer than they should have. For years in, things started to change. Our main product was stable, but growth was slowing. Competitors had caught up to our innovations. Investor pressure mounted for the next big thing. Executive meetings became closed-door affairs with raised voices that we could hear through the supposedly soundproof walls. That's when I first noticed the pattern. Team members would pitch ideas in our brainstorming sessions, and the best ones would mysteriously appear in executive presentations weeks later, reframed as strategic initiatives from leadership. The first time it happened to Priya on my team, she confronted Marcus directly. 2 weeks later, she was gone, pursuing other opportunities. I should have seen the warning signs. I should have protected myself better. But I still believed in the company, or maybe I just wanted to believe my experience was different. The idea came to me on a rainy Tuesday evening. Everyone else had gone home, but I was reviewing customer feedback reports, not because I had to, but because I genuinely cared. There was a pattern in the complaints, a gap in the market that none of our competitors had addressed either. I started sketching on the whiteboard, losing track of time as the concept took shape. At 2 a.m., I stepped back and felt that rare rush of clarity. This wasn't just an incremental improvement. This was the breakthrough we needed. For the next 3 months, I worked on it during evenings and weekends. I built prototypes on my personal laptop, conducted unofficial user tests with friends, and refined the approach. I kept it quiet, not out of distrust, but because I wanted it to be perfect before I shared it. I wanted to make sure it couldn't be dismissed or watered down in committee discussions. The irony doesn't escape me now. By trying to protect the idea, I created the perfect conditions for it to be stolen. When I finally felt ready, I scheduled time with Marcus. His assistant gave me 15 minutes between meetings. I remember waiting outside his office, rehearsing my pitch, clutching my laptop with sweaty hands. When I walked in, he was checking his phone, barely looking up. "Make it quick, Alex. Bored. Meeting prep today." I opened my laptop and started explaining. Halfway through my second slide, he put his phone down. By the 5th slide, he was taking notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, studying me with new interest. "How long have you been working on this?" he asked. "A few months," I admitted. Nights and weekends, mostly. This is exactly what we need right now. He nodded slowly. We need to get this in front of the executive team immediately. Can you be ready to present next Monday? The pride I felt in that moment, the validation, after years of anonymous contributions, was intoxicating. I spent the entire weekend refining the presentation, practicing my delivery, anticipating questions. I even bought a new shirt for the occasion. I had no idea I was preparing for my own professional execution. The most painful part, I handed everything over willingly, the research, the prototypes, the market analysis. I shared the folder containing 3 months of work without hesitation because I still believed we were on the same team. This could really save us, Marcus said, as I walked him through the technical details after the executive presentation. The timing couldn't be better. He was right about the timing. The company needed a win. What I didn't realize was that Marcus needed one even more, and he didn't care who he had to step on to get it. The week after my presentation felt different. Good different, I thought at the time. People from other departments nodded at me in the hallways. The VP of marketing asked me to lunch. Even Marcus seemed more engaged, stopping by my desk twice to ask follow-up questions about implementation timelines and technical specifications. We should document everything thoroughly, he said on Thursday afternoon, leaning against my cubicle wall. Can you put together a complete file with all your research, prototypes, and development notes? The executive team wants to review everything before we commit resources. Sure thing, I replied, feeling a surge of pride. I've got most of it organized already. Great. Send it directly to me by end of day. And Alex, he added, lowering his voice, let's keep this between us for now. Don't want to create unnecessary expectations with the team until we're ready to move forward. I nodded eagerly, interpreting his secrecy as a sign of how seriously they were taking my idea. That night, I stayed late, organizing every scrap of work into a comprehensive file, research notes, competitor analysis, user testing results, prototype code, even my original sketches with times. I labeled everything meticulously and sent it over with a message. Let me know if you need anything else explained. Marcus replied with a simple, got it, good work. For the next few days, I heard nothing. The silence wasn't concerning at first. Executives were always busy, and big decisions took time. But by Wednesday of the following week, something felt off. Meeting invites that normally included me were sent without my name. My emails to Marcus went unanswered. When I passed him in the hallway, he barely made eye contact. Then came the calendar notification, meeting with HR 2 p.m. conference room, B. My stomach dropped. Conference room B was where they took people to let them go, small, windowless, far from the main floor. We called it the box for a reason. I spent the morning in a fog, checking and rechecking my recent work for mistakes, wondering if I had offended someone or missed a critical deadline. By lunch, I couldn't eat. By 1:30, I couldn't sit still. At 1:55, I walked to conference room B on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Patricia from HR was already there, folder in hand, face set in that professional mask of controlled sympathy. Next to her sat Vince, the company's legal counsel. No, Marcus. Please, have a seat, Alex. Patricia gestured to the chair across from them. What's this about? I asked, though I already knew. Nexus Tech is undergoing some organizational restructuring, she began, her voice so practiced it sounded automated. Unfortunately, your position has been identified as redundant in the new structure. Redundant, I repeated. I lead product development for our core platform. How is that redundant? Patricia glanced at Vince, who took over with clinical precision. The company is consolidating several roles under the executive team's direct oversight. Your responsibilities will be absorbed by the leadership team moving forward. This is about my idea, isn't it? The words came out before I could stop them. This decision has nothing to do with any specific project, Vince replied smoothly. It's purely organizational. Patricia slid a document across the table. This is your severance package. For week's pay, continuation of benefits for 30 days, and standard non-disclosure and non-compete agreements. I stared at the paper, my vision blurring around the edges. I want to speak with Marcus. He's unavailable today, Patricia said, but he was involved in this decision and sends his regrets. I'm sure he does, I muttered. Vince's expression hardened. We'll need your decision on the severance package today. The company is prepared to be generous, but that requires your cooperation and discretion. My hands were shaking as I flipped through the pages. The non-compete would prevent me from working in our industry for 12 months. The NDA covered not just company secrets, but all concepts, ideas, and innovations developed while employed. They weren't just taking my job, they were trying to take ownership of my mind. And if I don't sign, I asked, then you leave today, with your final paycheck, and nothing more, Vince said flatly. 2 security guards appeared at the door, as if on cue. Not our regular building security, these were outsourced professionals with earpieces and blank expressions. Your access has already been deactivated, Patricia explained. They'll escort you to your desk to collect personal belongings, and then to the exit. I looked from the document to the guards and back again. Can I at least say goodbye to my team? We find clean breaks are best for everyone, Patricia said. You can email your goodbye after you've left the building. 20 minutes later, I stood on the sidewalk outside our building, clutching a cardboard box of desk plants and coffee mugs, watching through the glass doors as they changed the security codes. My phone buzzed with a text from Raj, a developer, on my team. What happened? Marcus just called an emergency meeting, said you're leaving to pursue other opportunities, and he's taking over the launch project personally. Is that true? And that's when I knew. It wasn't just my job they had taken. It was my idea, my work, my future. I stood there in the afternoon sun, watching people stream in and out of the building I'd called my second home for 5 years, and felt something shift inside me. The shock was giving way to something else, something focused and clear. I wasn't angry. I was determined. The first night after being fired was a blur. I remember walking the 12 blocks home instead of taking the bus, my cardboard box growing heavier with each step. My apartment felt foreign when I arrived. Too quiet, too empty. A place I'd been treating more like a storage unit than a home for the past few years. I set the box down on my kitchen counter and stared at its pathetic contents. A dying succulent. 2 company mugs I now hated. A framed photo of our team from last year's holiday party. And a desk drawer's worth of pens and sticky notes. 5 years of my professional life reduced to this. My phone had been buzzing constantly with messages from confused colleagues. I couldn't bring myself to answer any of them yet. Instead, I opened my laptop, thankfully my personal one, not a company device, and checked my bank account. The numbers stared back at me with brutal honesty. 2 months of rent and expenses, maybe 3 if I cut back drastically. After that, nothing. The panic hit in waves. First came the practical concerns, student loans, health insurance. Then the deeper questions. Who was I without my job? What would I tell my parents? How had I not seen this coming? I barely slept that night, cycling between rage, fear, and a strange sense of emptiness. By morning, my eyes were swollen from crying and my throat raw from shouting into my pillow. I made coffee on autopilot and sat at my small kitchen table, staring at the wall. My phone rang. Priya, my former team member, who had left months ago after her own run-in with Marcus. I hesitated, then answered. I just heard, she said without preamble. That absolute snake. Yeah, I managed, my voice cracking. Listen to me carefully, Priya continued, her tone shifting to something more urgent. Don't sign anything they gave you. Not yet. And back up everything you have related to. Your project? Everything. I don't have anything, I said. It was all on my work computer. Nothing. No drafts, no emails to your personal account, no cloud backups. I started to say no, then stopped. There was something, early in the development process, before I'd fully trusted the idea. I'd emailed key documents to my personal account, and I'd used my personal GitHub repository to store code for the initial prototype before moving it to the company's servers. Maybe some early stuff, I admitted. Get it? Altogether, Priya insisted, and called Devin. Devin was a lawyer friend who specialized in intellectual property. We'd met at a tech mixer last year, and kept in touch casually. I hadn't thought to call him. It seemed so futile to fight a company with Nexus's resources. But something in voice gave me pause. You think I have a case? I think Marcus has done this before, she said. And I think you're not the kind of person who lies down when someone steals from you. After we hung up, I sat motionless for several minutes. Then, with a clarity I hadn't felt since before the firing, I opened my laptop and started searching. First my email archives, then cloud storage accounts, then old USB drives. By noon, I had assembled a surprising amount of evidence. Dated emails describing my initial concept, early prototype code with my comments, notes from unofficial user, testing sessions, even photos I'd taken of whiteboard sessions in my apartment. Most crucially, I found an email I'd sent to myself 3 months ago, with the subject line "Next Big Thing Initial Thoughts." It contained the core concept, complete with diagrams and market analysis, all with clear timestamps predating any discussion with Marcus or the executive team. Around 2 p.m., Devin called me back after I'd left an urgent message. So they fired you, and now they're developing your idea. He summarized after I explained the situation. Exactly. And they want me to sign an NDA and non-compete that would basically prevent me from working in my field or ever mentioning that. The idea was mine. Don't sign anything, Devin said immediately. In fact, I want you to forward me whatever they sent you, and gather every piece of evidence showing you developed this concept independently. Already working on it, I said. But Devin, be realistic with me. What are my chances against a company like Nexus? There was a pause on the line. It depends on what you want, he finally said. If you're looking for full justice in court, it's an uphill battle. These cases are expensive and time-consuming, and companies like Nexus have legal teams on retainer specifically to wear down individuals like you. My heart sank, but, Devin continued, if you're strategic about this, you might have more leverage than you think, especially if they're planning to launch this product soon. That caught my attention. The launch is scheduled for next month. Marcus is making it his big moment: investor showcases, press events, the works. Interesting, Devin said, and I could hear him tapping notes on his keyboard. And you're sure they don't fully understand all aspects of your idea? There were elements you hadn't fully explained. I thought back to the presentation and subsequent discussions. There's a critical component they're almost certainly missing. I was still refining it when everything happened. Without it, the product will have serious flaws. Then we might have something to work with, Devin said. Here's what I need you to do, ... For the next few days, I operated with a focus I hadn't felt in years. I gathered evidence, documented timelines, and reconnected with former colleagues who might support my version of events. Raj, still at Nexus, became my secret inside source, texting me updates about the product development process. They're rushing everything, he wrote one evening. Marcus is pushing for launch no matter what. The dev team is raising red flags about stability issues, but he's shutting them down. I forwarded the message to Devin, who had become not just my legal advisor but something of a strategist. Perfect, he replied. Let them keep going. A week after being fired, I met Devin at a coffee shop far from the Nexus office. He slid a folder across the table to me. Patent application, he explained, based on your original work, with you as the sole inventor. We're filing it today. Can we do that? I asked. Won't the company claim ownership? Devin smiled for the first time since I'd met him. Employment agreements cover work done on company time with company resources. Your documentation clearly shows independent development before sharing with the company, and their subsequent actions firing you immediately after obtaining your research suggests bad faith. I stared at the application, my name listed as inventor of the technology that had cost me my job. What's our next move? We wait, Devin said, sipping his coffee. The product launch is what, 3 weeks away? Let's see what happens when they try to demonstrate a half-understood concept to a room full of investors and tech journalists. For the first time since security had escorted me from the building, I felt something like hope. Not just anger or determination, but actual hope. Marcus had taken my job and my idea, but he'd missed something crucial: my understanding of why it would work in the first place. I'm not looking to destroy the company, I said slowly. I just want what's mine. Sometimes, Devin replied, closing his laptop. Justice and strategy align perfectly. This might be one of those times. The 3 weeks leading up to Nexus Tech's product launch crawled by with excruciating slowness. I'd established a command center of sorts in my apartment laptop, open to industry blogs, phone constantly buzzing with updates from Raj, and walls plastered with notes and timelines. Devin called it healthy obsession. I wasn't sure about the healthy part. The official launch announcement hit tech media 10 days before the event. TechCrunch ran a feature. Nexus Tech promises industry revolution with new platform. There was Marcus, smiling confidently in the header photo, promising a completely original approach developed by our innovation team. The article mentioned his visionary leadership 3 times. My name appeared nowhere. I printed the article and added it to my wall. They're scrambling, Raj texted me that evening. 3 devs worked through the weekend trying to fix the integration issue. No one can figure out why your solution isn't working right. I knew exactly why. The core algorithm needed a specific calibration approach I'd developed, but never documented. Without it, the system would appear to work in controlled demos, but would collapse under real-world conditions. It wasn't something they could reverse engineer. It had taken me months of trial and error to perfect. 2 days before the launch, Devin and I met with a senior editor at TechWire, a respected industry publication known for investigative reporting. I can't promise anything, Eliza said after reviewing our evidence for nearly an hour, but this is certainly concerning. If the launch goes as you predict, we'd be interested in the full story. That's all we're asking, Devin replied. Just keep an open mind and be ready. The night before the launch, I barely slept. The event was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Westfield Conference Center downtown, a prestigious venue. Nexus had clearly spent a fortune to secure. According to the press release, over 200 industry insiders, investors, and journalists would be attending. I wouldn't be there in person, of course, but Raj had secretly set up a live stream link to the internal video feed, giving me a front row seat from my apartment. At 9:30 a.m., I settled in front of my laptop, coffee in hand, heart pounding. The stream showed the conference hall filling with attendees. The stage featured dramatic lighting and a massive screen displaying the Nexus logo. At precisely 10 a.m., the company's chief marketing officer stepped out to welcome everyone. Today marks a new chapter not just for Nexus Tech, but for the entire industry, she announced to enthusiastic applause. For the next 20 minutes, she walked through market challenges and opportunities, building anticipation for the big reveal. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. And now, the visionary behind today's breakthrough, our Chief Innovation Officer, Marcus Wells. Marcus strode onto the stage with practiced confidence, wearing a black turtleneck and what I recognized as his attempt to channel Steve Jobs. The audience applauded politely as he launched into his presentation. For the past year, he began, I've been developing a solution to the biggest challenge facing our industry. My hands clenched into fists. A year. He'd known about my idea for barely a month. Marcus continued through his presentation, using slides that looked remarkably similar to mine, though rebranded with Nexus colors and logos. He was a good presenter, confident, articulate, engaging. The audience seemed impressed, with many taking notes and nodding along. Then came the demonstration. Rather than just tell you about this revolutionary approach, let me show you what it can do, Marcus announced, gesturing to a large monitor on stage. This was it, the moment of truth. The demonstration began smoothly enough. The basic interface loaded, and Marcus walked through the primary features. But when he attempted to demonstrate the core functionality, the part that relied on my calibration algorithm, things started to unravel. The system lagged, then froze completely. Marcus tapped at the keyboard, his smile becoming increasingly forced. "Just a moment, folks," he said, glancing off stage where I could see frantic activity among the technical team. They restarted the demo. This time it got a bit further before producing visibly incorrect results. The very issue my calibration algorithm was designed to prevent. Asterisk, asterisk, the audience began to murmur. I spotted several investors exchanging concerned glances. A journalist in the front row was typing rapidly on her laptop. "As you can see," Marcus continued, his voice tight, "we're pushing the boundaries of what's possible. With cutting-edge innovation, occasional adjustments are necessary, but the damage was done." The demonstration had failed not once, but twice, in front of the exact audience Nexus had been counting on to validate their next growth phase. As Marcus struggled through the remainder of his presentation, I opened my email and attached the complete dossier Devin and I had prepared. My original concept documents with timestamps, the patent application, emails showing the timeline of events, and statements from 2 former colleagues corroborating my story. I addressed it to Eliza at TechWire, copied to 5 other technology journalists, and added a simple message. The Nexus Tech launch you just witnessed was based on my stolen intellectual property. I've attached evidence showing I developed this concept independently before the company took it and terminated my employment. I'm available for comment at your convenience. My finger hovered over the send button. This was the point of no return. Once I pressed it, there would be no going back, no quiet settlement, no easy resolution. I took a deep breath and clicked send. On screen, Marcus was wrapping up with forced optimism. "We're confident that these minor technical issues will be resolved before the official release next month." But the audience was already checking their phones. I watched as several journalists, including Eliza from TechWire, glanced down at their devices, then back at Marcus, with newly critical eyes. By afternoon, the first article appeared. Questions. Surround failed Nexus Tech launch. Former employee claims intellectual theft. By evening, 3 more publications had picked up the story, each adding new details from my documentation. At 9:17 p.m., my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered cautiously. "Alex, this is Vanessa Chen, chairperson of the Nexus Tech Board of Directors. I think we need to talk." The meeting with the Nexus Tech Board took place in a neutral location, a private conference room at Devin's law firm. I arrived 30 minutes early, rehearsing points with Devin while trying to calm my racing heart. "Remember," Devin said, straightening my tie, "they called us. That means we have leverage." At precisely 2 p.m., Vanessa Chen walked in, accompanied by the company's general counsel and a third person I didn't recognize. "No, Marcus. Thank you for meeting with us," Vanessa began, her expression serious but not hostile. "We've spent the past 48 hours conducting an internal investigation into the claims you've made public." I nodded but remained silent, following Devin's advice to let them speak first. "Our investigation has uncovered inconsistencies in Mr. Wells' account of the product development," she continued carefully. And we have concerns about the process that led to your termination. That was corporate speak, for Marcus lied and we know it. The general counsel slid a folder across the table. We're prepared to offer a settlement agreement that we believe addresses the situation fairly. Devin reviewed the document slowly, his expression revealing nothing. When he finished, he passed it to me. The terms were better than I'd expected. Full attribution as the original creator of the technology, a substantial financial settlement, and most surprisingly an offer to return to Nexus in a newly created role as Chief Product Architect, reporting directly to the board. And Marcus? I asked, looking up from the paper. Vanessa's expression tightened. Mr. Wells is no longer with the company, effective immediately. His actions violated multiple company policies regarding intellectual property and personnel management. Felt a complex wave of emotion, satisfaction, but not quite joy, closure but not quite peace. The press release announcing these changes has been drafted, the third person said, finally speaking. I recognized her, now Nexus's head of public relations. We'd like your approval on the language before it goes out. Devin and I stepped into the hallway to discuss privately. This is a good offer, he said quietly. Better than we might get even with a successful lawsuit. And the position? I asked. Should I go back? Devin shrugged. That's not a legal question. That's about what you want for your future. I thought about it, returning to the familiar offices, working with my old team, but under very different circumstances. There would be awkwardness, certainly, some resentment, possibly, but also an opportunity to build something genuine, with proper credit and authority. We returned to the conference room, and I placed the folder on the table. I'll accept the settlement and attribution, I said firmly. But I need to think about the position. Vanessa nodded. Of course, the offer remains open for 30 days. The press release went out that evening. It was carefully worded, but clear. Nexus Tech acknowledged me as the primary inventor of the technology, announced Marcus's departure, and outlined plans to rebuild with integrity under new product leadership. Tech media pounced on the story. My inbox flooded with interview requests, and LinkedIn exploded with connection invitations. 3 venture capital firms reached out about potential opportunities. Former colleagues sent messages ranging from congratulations to apologies for not speaking up sooner. The most surprising communication came a week later, an email from Marcus himself. I made a terrible mistake, he wrote. No excuses. What I did was wrong, and I'm paying the price. No one in the industry will touch me now. I read it several times, searching for manipulation or hidden agenda, but found only what seemed like genuine regret. I didn't reply. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. 2 weeks after the settlement, I made my decision. I met with Vanessa again, this time one-on-one over coffee. I'm grateful for the offer, I told her, but I'm declining the position. She seemed genuinely disappointed. May I ask why? Because I've realized something important, I explained. I don't just want credit for my ideas. I want to build a culture where what happened to me couldn't happen to anyone else. And I think I need to do that from scratch. I'd already received seed funding offers from 2 investors who had been at the failed launch. They weren't just investing in the technology, they were investing in the story, in the principle. We'll be competitors then, Vanessa said with a small smile. Not exactly, I replied. I'm focusing on a different application of the technology. There's room for both of us to succeed. As we parted ways, she shook my hand firmly. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Walking away, I felt lighter than I had in months. The settlement money meant security. The public recognition meant validation. But the decision to chart my own course, that was freedom. 1 year later, I stood in the reception area of my new company, Foundry Tech, watching as our team of 15 celebrated our first major client contract. The office was smaller than Nexus's grand space, just a converted loft with exposed brick and too many plants. But it felt more like home than anywhere I'd worked before. The journey to this point hadn't been easy. Starting a company from scratch meant learning skills I'd never needed before, raising capital, hiring strategically, managing cash flow, and building a company culture intentionally rather than letting it form by accident. Speech. Called Diane, our lead developer, raising a plastic cup of champagne. The team gathered around, their faces expectant. I'm not much for speeches, I began, feeling my cheeks warm. But a year ago today, I was sitting in my apartment, wondering if my career was over. Now I'm standing here with all of you, and we've just landed a contract that ensures our runway for the next 18 months. Cheers erupted from the small group. What we're building here isn't just great technology, I continued. It's a different way of working. Every idea in this company gets attributed to its creator. Every contribution gets recognized. That matters more to me than any algorithm or patent. After the celebration wound down and most of the team headed home, I stayed behind, walking through the quiet office. On the wall hung our first patent certificate, my name listed as primary inventor, but also acknowledging 2 team members who had significantly improved the original concept. Beside, it was a framed article from Business Insider titled, "Phoenix, from the Ashes. How Tech's Biggest IP Theft Led to Its Most Innovative New Startup." My phone buzzed with a text from Raj, who had joined Foundry 3 months after we launched. "Check your email. You're not going to believe who just applied for our new developer position." I opened my laptop to find an application from none other than Marcus Wells. His resume had been carefully edited to omit his final role at Nexus, instead emphasizing his early startup experience. There was no mention of the scandal that had ended his time there. I sat with that email for a long time, considering the strange circular path that had brought us to this point. A year ago, I would have deleted it immediately, perhaps with a choice word or two. Now, I felt something different, not forgiveness exactly, but perspective. I finally wrote back a simple message. "Thank you for your interest, but we don't have a suitable position for you at this time." As I locked up the office that night, I passed by the small conference room where earlier that day our team had been brainstorming our next product iteration. The whiteboard was covered with notes, diagrams, and signatures. We had a policy that everyone initialed their contributions during brainstorming sessions. It was such a simple thing, that wall of acknowledged ideas. But seeing it reminded me how far I'd come from the person who had nodded meekly while being escorted from Nexus Tech a year ago, outside. The spring evening was warm and full of possibility. I decided to walk home instead of taking my usual bus, giving myself time to appreciate the journey, not just the one through city streets, but the one that had transformed me from an employee who sought validation to a founder who created space for others to shine. I hadn't needed revenge after all. I'd needed something much more powerful, the chance to build something better.